Assume a sustenance source that violates every biological principle. Although it is classified as a fruit, it contains a greater quantity of beneficial lipids than salmon. It thrives in the frigid dead zones where other crops perish, yet it contains 12 times the amount of vitamin C as an orange. It is the sole known plant entity on Earth that possesses the entire sacred grail of lipids. Omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, and the elusive omega-7 are all contained in a single, vibrant orange package. This is essentially a biological battery that recharges human cells. However, I must issue a dire warning before you embark on your journey to locate it in the winter landscape. Nature has established a lethal snare. A silent assassin is known to thrive in the same locations. It closely resembles our hero with its seductive crimson berries. You will not receive a vitamin boost if you confuse this imposter for the miracle plant. With a debilitated nervous system, you will be issued a ticket to the emergency room. Please refrain from clicking. The distinction between medication and poison is a mere detail that 90% of individuals overlook. I will provide you with the 3-second filter to accurately identify the genuine bounty, as we are not merely uncovering a berry. Please remain with me until the end. It is a technology that has been forgotten, but it was instrumental in the restoration of radiation burns in Chernobyl and the operation of the greatest cavalry in history. Welcome to the reclaimed natural world. The narrative of seabuckthorn is as follows. In order to comprehend the unadulterated power concealed within these thorns, it is necessary to depart from the contemporary supermarket and journey back in time by 2,000 years. We are returning to the campaigns of Alexander the Great, which took place 326 years prior to the birth of Christ. Alexander's army was on the verge of collapse during his conquest of Central Asia, according to legend. The engines of his war juggernaut, his horses, were losing their life. In the harsh terrain, they were fatigued, wounded, and starving. These animals were required to be abandoned in accordance with military protocol. They were abandoned to perish in the untamed shrublands. However, the army did not discover any skeletons upon their return several weeks later. They discovered a marvel. The animals were alive. They were not merely alive, they were brimming with vitality. Their wounds had already healed. Their garments were particularly noteworthy for their supernatural sheen. They had been grazing on a thorny bush that was adorned with sour orange fruit. The Greeks were so taken aback that they christened the plant Hippope. It is literally translated as shining horse. This was not merely animal fodder. This was the initial documented instance of biological performance enhancement. Advance to the 12th century. The man who conquered half of the known world, Genghis Khan, did not solely rely on strategy. He depended on biochemistry. The Mongol cavalry were believed to have carried these fruit as a survival ration, according to historical records. It enabled his armies to endure harsher conditions, recover more rapidly, and ride more vigorously than their adversaries. The Mongols were sustained by a plant that transformed the barren stride into a pharmacy, while other armies succumbed to scurvy and fatigue. For centuries, this plant served as the clandestine weapon of emperors and conquerors. It was the earth's blood. Therefore, it is imperative that you pose a query to yourself that is exceedingly uncomfortable. Today, this plant is entirely absent from the shelves of your local grocery store, despite its capacity to revive an ailing horse and power the Mongol Empire. Why are you purchasing synthetic vitamins when this plant grows naturally in the snow? The response is discouraging. It did not vanish because it ceased to function. It vanished as a result of a contemporary adversary that prioritizes profit over your well-being. They believed that the Mongols marked the end of the era of legends. They were mistaken. The horseberry that was glossy did not vanish. It has gone subterranean, or, more precisely, it ascended above the atmosphere. While the West concentrated on synthetic pharmaceuticals during the Cold War's zenith, Soviet scientists were discreetly conducting research into their ethnobotanical archives. They were in search of a solution to a problem that had never been encountered by a human: cosmic radiation. Radiation penetrates cellular DNA in a manner reminiscent of a shotgun explosion when one departs the Earth's protective magnetic field. In orbit, conventional lotions and medications were rendered ineffective. A biological barrier was required by the Soviet space program. In the oil of seabuckthorn, they discovered it. This is a matter of historical record. Seabuckthorn oil, which is referred to as oblika in Russia, was employed by Russian cosmonauts, including the crews of the Soyuz rockets and the space station, to safeguard their epidermis from radiation burns. It was not a cosmetic decision. It was a survival protocol. They employed it to repair the cellular injury that was induced by the powerful G-forces of reentry. However, the genuine examination of this plant's capabilities occurred on the 26th of April 1986. Chernobyl. A hellscape of radioactive isotopes was unleashed when reactor number 4 detonated. The initial responders and victims experienced acute radiation dermatitis, which was characterized by burns that were unable to recover due to the genetic degeneration of the tissue. Conventional antibiotics and salves were unsuccessful. The medical teams turned to the ancient archives in desperation. During the catastrophe, seabuckthorn oil was one of the few treatments that were approved for radiation burns. Where modern medicine failed, it succeeded. Contemplate that for a moment. What do you believe this plant can do to address the minor injury your body experiences on a daily basis if it produces an oil that is potent enough to protect human skin from cosmic rays and nuclear fallout? It is widely considered to be the most potent substance for epidermis repair. The local supermarket does not carry fresh seabuckthorn. Apples that have been stored in cold storage for a year are available for purchase. However, the fruit that alleviates radiation injuries is not available for purchase. What was the reason for their neglect of it? No, they declined to accept it. The rationale for this reveals the insidious nature of our contemporary food system. We must first examine the inconceivable biology within the berry in order to comprehend why this miracle is prohibited from the produce aisle. The legends have ultimately been surpassed by science. We now understand the reason for the Mongol horse's radiance. It was not a mystical occurrence. It was omega-7. You are aware of omega-3 fatty acids from fish and omega-6 fatty acids from legumes. However, seabuckthorn is the most abundant natural source of omega-7 palmitoleic acid in the globe. This is the omega that was misplaced. The epithelial membranes that line your stomach and lungs, as well as your skin and hair, are composed of a particular fatty acid. You are not merely ingesting a vitamin when you consume this berry. You are consuming the primary components of your own protective barriers. This is the reason why it is able to repair ulcers. This is the reason it alleviates tired eyes. This is the reason it rescued the cosmonauts. The statistics continue to escalate. Each seabuckthorn berry contains up to 12 times the vitamin C content of an orange. Consider the act of extracting the liquid from a dozen oranges into a capsule that is the size of a pea. That is the density we are discussing. It is a biological battery. Therefore, we have a plant that surpasses salmon in terms of healthful fats and humiliates citrus in terms of vitamins. What is the reason for its absence from every farm in the United States? The variation is as follows. The facility effectively anti-industrialized itself. Seabuckthorn has developed a defense mechanism that renders it an absolute torment for capitalism. This mechanism is referred to as the fracture mechanism. These berries lack a robust stem. In contrast to an apple or cherry, they adhere directly to the branch's timber, encircling it tightly to provide warmth during the winter. Additionally, the fruit's epidermis is composed of liquid oil and is as thin as paper. The fruit erupts when a mechanical harvester attempts to seize it. It is shattered. It is impossible to retrieve it using a machine. Furthermore, the vicious 3 inch thorns will rip your hands to shreds if you attempt to harvest it by hand. This is an issue that the produce industry despises. They desire crops that are uniform, durable, and simple to transport. They prioritize shelf life over human life. Seabuckthorn is unwilling to adhere to their regulations. Patience is required. Caring for it is necessary. Additionally, it has been eliminated from your diet due to its inability to be commoditized, stamped, and dispatched in a cardboard box. However, they committed an error. They presupposed that you would be satisfied with their inferior substitutes. They were mistaken. Having acquired knowledge of the science, it is now time to reclaim this asset. However, in order to accomplish this, it is necessary to be aware of how to manage the situation without causing harm. Additionally, it is imperative that you are aware of the silent murderer that lurks in its shadow. First, we should defuse the device. I cautioned you about this at the outset. The 3-second filter is designed to differentiate liquid gold from lethal poison. Bittersweet nightshade or Selenium doulamara is the name of the imposter. It is fond of the same neglected, damp soil. It traverses the same boundaries and bears alluring red berries. Here is an instantaneous method for distinguishing them. Examine the foliage. Seabuckthorn leaves are silvery green and slender, resembling those of willows. Nightshade leaves are characterized by their broad, dark green appearance and their resemblance to arrowheads or hearts. Examine the spines. The fruit is safeguarded by seabuckthorn's sharp, aggressive spines. Nightshade is a silky vine. It is devoid of barbs. Examine the fruit. This is the deciding factor. The branch is firmly gripped by seabuckthorn berries. It appears that they are adhered to the wood. Nightshade berries are suspended in drooping clusters, resembling miniature grapes. As a general rule, if it is hanging, it should be left hanging. If it adheres to the wood and responds with thorns, you have discovered the gold. Secondly, it is imperative that you comprehend the gender dilemma. 90% of novice cultivators become unsuccessful at this stage. Seabuckthorn is a spiteful individual. This implies that there are distinct male and female organisms. The pollen is produced by the males, while the berries are produced by the females. A single berry will never be observed if you purchase a single plant at a nursery or if you purchase 6 female plants and 0 males. You will possess only a thorny shrub and nothing else. The golden ratio is 1:6. A minimum of 1 male plant is required for every 6 female plants. Plant the male in the direction of the wind to ensure that the pollen is carried to the females by the airflow. It is not merely horticulture. It is engineering. Finally, how can one harvest a fruit that explodes upon handling it? You do not oppose nature. Rather, you employ the cold to combat it. The cryogenic harvest exploit. Do not attempt to pick the berries individually in the autumn. The juice will oxidize instantaneously as a result of crushing them. Rather, anticipate the winter's profound chill. Alternatively, if you are harvesting early, remove the entire branch that is laden with fruit from the shrub. There is no need for concern. The plant is fond of pruning. It promotes development. Take that branch and place it directly into your deep freezer. Please wait for 24 hours. The berries will be frozen solid, resembling small orange marbles. When you extract them, gently strike the branch against a firm surface. Cleanly, intact, and without any disturbance, the berries will fall off. You have successfully circumvented the industrial issue that prevents this nutrient from being sold at Walmart. In our world, health is being sold to us in the guise of processed pills and synthetic powders. They leave toxic waste in the oceans after extracting omega-3 from animals. In laboratories, they produce vitamin C. They break down nature into components that can be sold. The cultivation of this plant is not solely for the purpose of obtaining complementary supplements. It is an act of defiance. It is a denial of a food system that prioritizes shelf-stable waste over nutrient-dense life. By planting this, you are establishing a thriving pharmacy in your backyard. You are establishing a connection with the same energy that provided the Mongol legions with fuel and protected the astronauts. The fable of the shiny horse has been dispelled. It is genuine. It is highly potent. It is now yours to reclaim. Establish your independence.